Welcome to Sales for Nerds. I'm your host and chief nerd, Reuben Swartz. If you started a business because you love serving clients but realized you didn't like the sales and marketing aspect of running that business so much, this is the podcast for you. Sales and marketing doesn't have to suck. It can actually be a lot of fun. And on this show, we're going to teach you how to connect instead of network, teach instead of market, help instead of sell, so you can keep serving people even while you're building your pipeline and growing your business. Now let's get to it. All right, welcome folks to another December solo episode of Sales for Nerds. I've done a couple of these talking about positioning, talking about the two-step sales process, talking about lessons I've learned, etc. And this time I want to talk about the secret of secrets. And before I get too far into this is going to draw heavily on Peter Thiel's book 0 to 1. And if you know me, I am not a huge fan of Peter Thiel. I have so many reasons to really dislike what he's about, but I think he's onto something very important with this notion of secrets. So that's a whole other interesting conversation, but I will be cribbing from some of his book notes, and I actually do recommend that you read his book. You can find the PDF online if you don't already have it. But the basic thing I want to talk about is, for independent consultants, the number one thing I hear is, I want more leads, right? I just wish I had more leads. And of course, this goes to, well, are they good leads, and are you actually talking to them, right? Are you sure about who you want to be talking to, and are you actually following up, or are you just trying to get more people in some kind of list that you can say, well, now I have leads, even though you're not really going to follow up with them, and it's going to be really hard to turn them into clients. So I'm often trying to get people to work on their positioning to make sure they're really clear on who would be an ideal client, who they really want to meet, and who would be a good partner to make referrals to that type of person. And also, let's make sure you're actually following up and talking to those people, because if you meet them, there's a very good chance that they might be interested in what you're doing, but they're not ready to buy right now. Obviously, being ready to buy right now is a great criteria for an ideal client profile, but it's not always possible to figure out exactly when that is. To go back to my well-worn doctor analogy, lots of patients come in and consult with the doctor. Not all of them need surgery right now. Some of them might never need surgery. But you kind of want them coming into your waiting room every once in a while and talking to you, and then at the right time, you're ready to perform the surgery when they're ready. So a lot of times when I talk to people about their positioning and how are you different, I'm a small business coach and I'm a business coach and I help small business owners who are stuck with business problems get better at business, or something like that, right? Just to use the hackneyed example. Okay, great. How do I differentiate you from the hundreds of other people like that in my database, let alone out there in the world? Oh, well, I really care about client results. I put customer service first, blah, 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 blah. That may be true, but one, it's not really a differentiator. Everyone's saying that. Even the people who don't, perhaps especially the people who don't, are saying it, and it's very hard to prove. So is there some way that you can demonstrate that or talk about it in a way that provides a little bit more of a strong signal? Think about the peacock's tail in evolution. There's this notion of costly displays of fitness that are hard to fake, right? Everyone can say I'm super fit, but if you grow this ginormous impractical tail, well, that shows that you have something going on. Not that we not necessarily want to have peacock tails for our business, but the idea is, if it's going to be a signal like I care about customer service, is there some way that you can demonstrate that actually is meaningful to people? Now, a better way to think about this, I think, is to talk in terms of secrets. What are things that you know, that you believe to be true for your particular audience that other people don't know, or may not be true for a broader audience? And it's sort of like knowing that secret is admission to your tribe. So Thiel talks about this classification between conventions, secrets, and mysteries. Conventions are what we all know. Gravity makes things fall, etc. Mysteries are things that we just can't explain. Why did the Big Bang happen? Blah, 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 blah. And in between are secrets, things that a few people know, but most people don't. They may be true in some situations, but not in others. And we can think about examples like He cites Airbnb and Uber in his book, right? The notion that with smartphones and more connectedness, you could rent out a room in your house or rent out a seat in your car in a way that hadn't been practical before, upending transportation, upending the hospitality business. The people who learned those secrets and believed in them had a huge impact compared to somebody who said, well, I'm going to start another hotel or I'm going to get a taxi medallion. Nothing wrong with those businesses either. They're conventional businesses. The secrets are the things that cause big shifts. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be at the level of Uber or Airbnb and start multi-billion-dollar companies to have secrets. Just using those examples because they are things that we can relate to and people kind of generally know about them. Another good example, I think, is Apple and Microsoft. And this is an example of secrets that can contradict each other and both be true. So when I think about Apple, I think about trying to make things simpler and simpler and simpler. And the notion that people will pay to have something easy, even if it seems like it's crippled by power user standards. And Microsoft took the opposite approach and said, we don't even care about hardware. We're going to create a software company that's going to commoditize all the hardware, and you're going to be able to do all this amazing stuff. And in the process, we're going to put a computer on every desktop and in every home, which, by the way, was a ludicrous goal when they came out with it. Absolutely insane. And those views of the world do not line up. They don't agree with each other, but they can both be true and they can both lead to success for their respective companies. So your secret doesn't necessarily have to agree with everyone else's secret. In fact, it's better if you don't. And this is something that Thiel talks about in the book, the notion of, what do you believe in that most people don't? That's a good place to start looking for your secrets. And I like to think of it as you have some symptom and people will often use a superficial explanation for a symptom, but kind of like the iceberg underneath, there's a secret, which is what really explains what's going on better than the superficial explanation. So one thing I noticed when I started talking about the need for my tribe, right, independent consultants and coaches and folks like that, to recognize that they're in a relationship business, therefore they're in a conversation business. I mean, it doesn't even seem all that interesting an observation. It's like, duh. But for years, maybe for decades, I was in denial about that. And I realized a lot of my tribe doesn't believe that, doesn't recognize it. And then when they hear that, they go, oh, that's so true. And then you can say, okay, now you have a two-step sales process of figuring out exactly who you want to talk to and talking to them. But if you just say, here's your two-step sales process, and they don't understand the secret, they might think, oh, no, that's silly. I don't need to do that. I can just use email. I'm going to use LinkedIn outbound campaigns, etc. I can do all those things because I don't want to talk to people. It's awkward. And what I'm trying to share as a secret is, no, you're in a relationship business. You are in a conversation business. There's no getting around that. So the question is, how do you go about it intentionally so that you actually enjoy having those conversations so you do them? Now, as the world gets, we're accumulating knowledge, which in theory means we're destroying secrets, right? Things that were mysteries a long time ago became secrets and are now often conventions. And this is happening at an accelerating rate. So you might be concerned that we're running out of secrets. And I would argue instead that culture actually generates secrets. It's a secret generating machine because it creates more nuance and complexity as it goes along, and there are going to be little secrets hidden in the nooks. So, talking about the Apple and Microsoft example, like that wasn't a thing that could even be discussed 50 or 100 years ago. 50 years ago it was probably close to getting discussed. That's when Apple and Microsoft got started in 1975. But obviously, going back to ancient times, no one was talking about hardware and software. Those types of secrets didn't exist, right? Airbnb and Uber were not things that were secrets. I was talking to a financial planner, exit planner recently, and he does some great work for his clients. But one thing that's always been hard is to sort of describe what he does in a way that's compelling, because everyone sounds the same in his industry. And he is very bothered that a lot of people in the industry are not really doing right by the client. Like, they say they're putting the client first, but they're often not. And one thing he told me that was really interesting is, first of all, everyone exits their business, which is obvious when you think about it, but most of us don't like to think about it because we don't like to think about our mortality or getting so old that we can't run our business. But everyone exits their business eventually. And most people don't do it on terms that they like. And what he said that was really interesting was 75% of the people who exit on terms that they like regret it within a year. Right? The whole notion of running your own business is a terrible way to achieve happiness and fulfillment, because people don't do it intentionally, and instead the business kind of ends up owning them. This is a much more interesting way of talking about owning a business and preparing to exit it than just talking about, well, I'm going to reduce your tax burden or whatever. Right? It's the secret. The secret is most business owners will fail at exiting their business in a way that they like. That's amazing. So, would love to hear from you what your secret or secrets might be. And that's actually another important point. You can have more than one secret, and in fact, it's often good if they kind of go as stepping stones. So you need a certain secret to get in the door. It's like kind of like religious orders, right? You got to experience the basic stuff, and then you graduate to more esoteric knowledge. One of the things that Thiel talks about in his book is that we have so much information now we can't form cults anymore, which apparently is completely incorrect. You'd think that knowledge would be an antidote to cultish behavior, but it's not necessarily the case. And I like to think of it as, can we have secrets that allow us to form a healthy cultish type audience or tribe or group or whatever that can do things that you couldn't do if you didn't understand the secrets? So sometimes you need an initial secret to kind of get in the door, and then you might have subsequent secrets that make sense if you believe the first one. One reason that I had trouble getting people to buy into the two-step sales process of let's figure out who you want to talk to exactly and let's talk to them, right? Which seems so basic. But if people don't believe they're in a conversation business, there's no need for them to do that, especially if they're like, well, I don't want to talk to people. Why would I go do something that involves me talking to a whole bunch of people? Oh, okay, it's because I'm in a relationship business. Therefore, my business is a conversation business. I have to do it. Got it. Okay. And you can kind of step through, people can step through your secrets and get to where they need to go, right? Not just where you need them to go, but where they need to go, thanks to the knowledge that you're imparting to them. So for next year, think about, can you express what you do in terms of one or more secrets? This is a more powerful way to introduce what you do, to have other people be able to recall and refer what you do, right? They're sharing the secret to the right people. And it sort of forces us to think in terms of true differentiation rather than sort of the superficial differentiation. Oh, I care about customer service, or I have a unique background in blah, 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 which usually isn't actually unique. It might be interesting, but it's not unique. The notion of going after secrets really forces us to think about what's different, and it lets us divide people into the folks who were like, oh yeah, gosh, that really makes sense. Thanks. Now I understand my world a little better. And people who are like, that doesn't make any sense to me. That does not apply to me. And there's a reticence sometimes to push people away to say, well, gosh, that doesn't apply to me, or that sounds crazy. And as I've talked about in terms of mega positioning, M stands for magnetic. And a magnet has two poles. an attractive pole and a repulsive pole, or a referral pole if you like to think about it maybe less negatively. But just like in physics, in marketing and in business, those poles are of equal and opposite strength. So we can't have a pole that powerfully attracts our ideal client and the other pole that doesn't really push anybody away, or it lets other people weakly come to us. No, we want both of those poles to be super strong. Firstly, of course, to attract our ideal client, to let them know, oh, you're in the right place. And secondly, to save us a bunch of time from talking to the people who would be better served elsewhere. And secrets are a very powerful way to do that. Of course, if you're in Mimrin on the mission and positioning screen, there is now a place where you can put your secret in and see how that might play out on your elevator pitch, on your website, in your LinkedIn posts, et cetera, et cetera. But regardless, it's not necessarily rocket science, and it's probably something that you take for granted, right? It's something that's so simple to you that you probably don't mention it a lot of the time. It's just part of like water is wet for you. You're a fish in the water. But for other people, they're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So if you got a great secret or you're just having trouble coming up with a secret, drop me a note. hello@salesfornerds.io or Reuben@mimrin.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I love talking about this stuff. I think this goes a long way to making business easier and more fun. It's so easy to get lost in the slog of not being differentiated, struggling to do sales and marketing, thinking sales and marketing is just terrible. And instead, when we start thinking about it in terms of secrets and talking to our ideal clients and not everybody, then having those conversations gets a lot more interesting, and we find that we're not necessarily having sales calls. We're just having conversations with the right patients, some of whom need surgery at the right time, and we can go help them and make a big difference. Thanks so much. And for those of you listening before the end of the year, happy holidays and all the best in 2025. Thanks for listening. Drop an iTunes review or a review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you've got a friend who would benefit from this episode, let them know about it. If you've got a friend who wouldn't benefit from this episode, but you just haven't talked to for a while, now's a great time to give them a call. Thanks for listening. Until next time.